Welcome to episode 10 of the Cold Rush podcast. You have with you Eric Wiegand. I was 10 years in sales, now founder of Demonstro for all your lead generation and Anthro Test Labs for your sales automation, your go-to-market automation. So it rhymes. It's great. I thought of that today. So Caspian, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Caspian Lewke. I am former SDR, former SE, current AE at Numeric for all of your accounting automation needs for any of you accountants that may be listening. And yeah, more on that, more for that boots on the ground perspective. And might I just say, here we are, 10 episodes in. I don't know what the stats are. I'm going to quote some numbers that I think are maybe correct. I believe there's a stat where it's something like 90% of podcasts that start don't make it to 10 episodes. And then from within that small percentage, 90% don't make it to 100. So we're at milestone number 1. So here we go. So 90 more to go, you know?
Exactly. Let's get us to that Spotify monetization goal.
Let's go. Yeah, please share this. We are trying to make money. So yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the typical sales perspective is we're trying to make money any way we can. But, we're doing it for the fans at this point, right?
Exactly.
But why don't you walk us through what we're talking about today?
Yeah. Today we are talking about, candidly, something that I think not enough people think about thoughtfully, which is list building. Basically, like, it's really the inception of Outbound, right? When you think about like what came first, the chicken or the egg, like what came first, the prospect or the list, right? Like some people you may, pop up on your radar and you're like, oh, that's a good person to go after. But if you ever really want to operationalize Outbound in any form or fashion, where does it start? Starts with a list. So we are going to be diving into all the ins and outs of that. What makes a good list? What makes a bad list? How can you go about creating that? What tools can you use? And everything in between. So
Yeah. And, I think the biggest, I don't know, stick in my craw that I have with this, right, is that like so many people think about list building. And it's probably just because I do this so much and for, a bunch of clients and in so many different ways. But so many people think about it as just like, here we go. We're going to put in our ICP, which is, industry, revenue, employees, and, maybe a couple other things. And I think it's just so much more than that. And like, I mean, if you spend any time on LinkedIn, you see all these like crazy maneuvers that people are doing. And myself, I'm doing those very same maneuvers, but you can really tell the difference when you get down to it of, here's my TAM, right? And that is like, okay, that is your total addressable market that you could sell to theoretically in your lifetime, but nothing from there is indicating anything as to whether they're interested, if the time is right, if they have contact details. I mean, there's so much more to it. So I'd love to kind of get your perspective and start thinking about like, what are you doing for lists?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I mean, I think lists at a high level is something that um it's actually a focus for me in my current role. I think that, I have a lot of context at larger companies where there's a kind of a preordained list, if you will, right? Like when I was
Yep.
at Gong, um, rules of engagement, super, super strict, where you have a defined territory. You do not go outside of that territory. And if you do, yeah, are going to get in trouble. And so list building is something that is an area of opportunity for me. I think that the whole um, focus is how can you sort of compile a list of potentially low hanging fruit, right? And for some people, it's based off of, ICP is like the starting point of that.
Yep.
But I think ideally you compile a list based on, ICP, but also like potential intent signals. There's places you can look like close lost opportunities, old leads,
Yep.
people following your company on LinkedIn. But the whole goal, all of those are just different avenues you can take. The goal is basically like, how can we identify people that are as close as possible to potentially closed won revenue, right? Now, it all starts with a meeting, but like ideally, you want to compile a list of not only people that will take a meeting with you, but are genuinely good fits for your product so that they're not, it's not just a meeting that happens and then the deal stalls, but it's a meeting that happens that progresses and evolves into a legitimate deal. So,
Yep.
uh, yeah, I'm happy to kind of dive into things, but I think that there's a lot of people that don't really know how to compile lists, and there are a lot of lists that just candidly are kind of trash. And so I feel like you are excellent at this stuff. Like, why do you think so many lists are just, let's just be blunt, why are so many lists trash?
I mean, call me excellent, thank you, but, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But, I think what it really comes down to is, like, either you don't have the tools that make it easy enough to get down to those, like, 2nd and 3rd levels, or you don't have, like, engagement in mind. You don't have when you're building the list, you're not structuring it in such a way that you can enact on those, right? Or you just like haven't taken the time and you are thinking, hey, listen, I'm just gonna let my volume speak to, the outcomes. And to be clear, like that was a viable strategy for the past, like, put 6 years ago, whatever, for the past 6 years, like that was a viable strategy. It's just like put your entire TAM in there and just like spew it out. And people were just like amazed that their name was in an email and they're like, oh, wow, I will read this. Right. Um, but it's just become so much harder. So, like, I kind of think of it in like a specific framework of you're going from like what's possible and then you're going to what's probable and then likely. And then, from there, just like who you're reaching out to. So, like, to contextualize that, possible is like your ICP filters, right? What we were talking about before. And I think that's where a lot of people stop with the list building activities. And that's when they start jumping into the outreach activities. And so you're saying, like, okay, revenue, employee size, industry, whatever, great, ship it, right?
Yep.
And I think it goes down to then, okay, that's your TAM. When you're at the possible level, when you're at the probable level, you start thinking about things like, what are the technical limitations of my product that will basically give me the edge? Like an example for you is I worked at a company that sold to DevOps, right? And if they didn't have a specific AWS framework, then we couldn't work with them, right? So we had to get kind of scrappy to figure out, like, do they have this specific framework in order for us to even possibly sell to them, right? And that's not something that you're going to be able to find in your Apollos or your Zoom Infos or whatever. So you kind of got to like dig around for that. Another great example, because you might not be limited like that, but looking at what tools you integrate with, right? I'm sure Numeric integrates with certain tools. I mean, Demonstro integrates with certain tools, like we all do, right?
Yeah.
So finding those companies that basically are using those tools will give you that kind of next step down to say, like, probable. At least you have a reason. And this is why I say think about your engagement. At least you have a reason to reach out. Hey, I see that, you are using Salesforce and we integrate with Salesforce to do this, this, and this. Would love to have a conversation, right? Just getting you another step down. And then you were, hitting the nail right on the head when we're talking about the likely layer, which says, like, how do we add intent? Things like, they just raised money, so they have some budget, right? And also with that comes some other constraints because, maybe their board or their VCs have higher expectations or they want things done a certain way, blah, blah, blah. That's when you can really step in. Other things like job posts, right? I gave the example of the technical limitations that we had in the past. I couldn't find those out through Apollo. Back in the day, I was just looking at job posts that would mention the specific framework for people that they were hiring, and then I knew that the account was using it. Today, right, use Clay, use AI, like you use all these different tools, and you can scrape job posts super easily. So finding that information of this is higher likelihood of this happening. And then of course you have like the plays like your champion from one company move to another. Hey, this is probably a good account to at least reach out to your own personal network, right? Whether it's like LinkedIn connections or you're using something else, website visitors, right? If a company has visited your website, or now there's persona level identification. So if a person has reached your website, your closed loss campaigns that you mentioned, these are all that likely layer that you can start pulling together to say like, okay, now I know the company that I want to go after. All I got to do is get the decision maker, the buying committee, the contact details from there. And now you have yourself set up a good strategy to kind of like move forward, right? But I think what I said at the beginning of this is always the tricky part is like, one, you can have a strategy, but the other side is kind of like, do you have the right tools? So I'm
Yeah.
curious in your boots on the ground. Hey, I'm an AE. There's AEs listening. How do you, as an individual contributor, go out and get these signals and put together that list?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think like signals themselves, I think there's a bunch of different tools you can use. I will say generally, and I may circle back to that. A lot of my lists right now are being compiled in Sales Nav. Like I think that
Yep.
for me, I've found that just to be um the best way to do kind of like aggregated research, right, across companies. And I think different companies care about different things. As a AE, I definitely care about like size of
Mhm.
prize, right? Like I want to understand who could, number one, be a good prospect for my company, but also, of course, I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing my outbounding efforts to those companies that hopefully will lead to a higher ACV than, those that won't. I want to be clear.
Yeah.
I'm a scrappy dude. I have worked large deals. I have worked not so large deals. I just think that you have to be really thoughtful of where you're spending your time, which is why in that research, depending on whether you have like a seat basis or like or if there are items that you can infer from what you're able to research publicly, you should use that as a way to kind of prioritize your time, right? I think there's different ways you can prioritize how to compile a list, how to reach out to prospects. I think in an ideal world, it is people, of course, that are like doing some sort of RFP. Let's say that that is like priority. Like the most amazing thing is if people are formally looking and evaluating software.
Yep.
Rarely is it possible to get that information publicly, right? So generally we're settling for different types of intent signals, right? Like people hiring, the information in those job recs, growth on the team, shrinkage on the team.
Yep.
It's going to look different for different folks. Um, that I think is like always good to understand is general intent signals. But then on top of that, and normally it's a blend of the two that maybe gives you some sort of like a what I will call like a loose scoring system for how to prioritize your outreach or how to compile a list is intent signals coupled with size of prize helps give you kind of like an estimated like probability of revenue, right? Where
Yep.
it's like, okay, if it's a giant account and there is minimal likelihood they're going to close, okay, like it's more of a shot in the dark, but if we do get them, really potentially big payoff. If there's really strong intent, medium-sized account, maybe that actually has more of a weighted higher
Yeah.
potential revenue than the large account. And so to me, I try to use a blend of those two, um, which I'm mostly doing through Sales Nav. But to your point, it's really relevant for you to understand if there are technical limitations of your product, like to look into that, right? Like I use, shout out to Sumble. Like Sumble's a great company that like helps give context on different companies' tech stack, right? And so it's a great way
Hmm.
for you to get a quick understanding of like, okay, is this even a company that like if they loved what we do, we could support, right? And I think that's a tool that I use.
Yep. Yep. And I love what you said there. When you're referring to the like ACV or the ARR that's going to come out of like the companies, because I think, and this isn't really on list building, so I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but I think so many reps have these, stars in their eyes where they want to take like the biggest accounts in their territory.
Yep.
When you're left up like open to these things and you're like, if I close Salesforce, I'm going to be the fucking king,
Yeah.
right? And it just comes down to like the time you waste in some of those large deals are just not worth it. And you could have made that up with a couple of medium sized deals that were
Yep.
much more likely to close. Right. And so having that diversified portfolio, and this is how it does apply to list building, the diversified portfolio of like, let me get some, a bunch of medium sized companies, one or two large companies, and a few small deals, right? And then if you have that diversified, the small deals hopefully are moving quicker. The medium deals are, basically your sales cycle. It's hanging about average. And then those larger deals you might be nurturing for months, sometimes even years, right? To get those big whales. But just having that in your mind when you're doing this is really important, right?
Yeah.
Um, as far as like what I use, I kind of move from, like I said, in my framework from big to small. What's possible, what's probable, what's likely. And so, I'll use something like Capallo or Zoom Info to really get that large TAM.
Yeah.
And then from there, and I should say, right, it depends on what your industry is because, like, I'm working for a couple of clients that aren't in the B2B sales industry, right? So for some of them, these databases don't really work for finding that information. So either there's another sales database that's out there that works, or you got to resort to kind of scraping the internet. And it's finding these databases that list maybe organizations, but it's not for sales, right? And then it's taking that scrape and that large database and then paring it down to the next steps. And for that, whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C or whatever the case may be, I'm usually using Clay for
Yeah.
that information to pull some information, right? So, jobs, champion movements, whether it's like going to the company's website to scrape their solutions, scrape their current customers, right? Find out information about them to score them. And, I'm a big proponent of like lead scoring in order to do that work in the background to understand like, is this worth the squeeze, right? And you can do a lead scoring based on, what's my upside versus my probability. All that kind of stuff is pretty simple to do. And then I had mentioned before, like person level identification. I've used RB2B and Vector right now for both of those at the same time because I just like to test and see if
Mhm.
things are working. So I have both of those and they show different people at different times. So I feel like I got good coverage at this point for website identification, and that's specifically persona level identification, not just company
Yeah.
identification. And then obviously your CRM, like HubSpot for closed lost, and then Clay for enrichment of contact details. And sometimes I'll plug in other systems to Clay so that I'm not burning my Clay credits. But
Yep.
for all intents and purposes, that is kind of the orchestration. And then I think the most important thing is as I said before, is thinking of your next steps, like how you're going to outreach that. Because one of the keys that I do is take that information from Clay and I'll do a master list of all these people, but based on the different intent signals and, different kind of like flags that they set up, I'll route them into different sequences
Mm.
from there. And so, those could be calling, LinkedIn, email, whatever, texting, WhatsApp. Um, but the key there is having that main source of truth that then I'm taking all these other factors and then putting them where they should be and thinking about that next step kind of as I do it.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I feel like it's I mean, for some of these things there are definitely different tools that you can use to kind of create create lists and like pre-filter and sub-filter, and I think it's just a question of like what matters to you, right? And
Yeah.
because again, some companies don't have nearly as many don't care as much about like the technical limitations because candidly there aren't any, right? And others are much more focused on like, okay, we have really high ACVs, but there needs to be like these 10 conditions met for it to like really, really be a great opportunity. And I think it's just important for you to understand why you're reaching out to that person and what makes them a good
Yeah.
candidate. Like I've said this on cold calling, but it applies to any sort of outbounding. If you can explain why you're reaching out to someone, you shouldn't, right? Like meaning
Yeah.
that you should know why is it relevant to this person? Why is it going to help them? And what like why is it relevant to this person and to this company, right? It's not just, hey, you're a VP of sales and I sell to VPs of sales, right? It's like you're a VP of sales, you were brought on 6 months ago, you know, the team has grown by 3% and you have 4 open job recs and I'm helping people
Yep.
source qualified, you know, it's like whatever the case may be, you got to figure out what it is that they're focused on, or you got to look and find relevant observations, make an assumption based on said observations, and then like your tool should help solve said assumed problems.
Exactly, exactly. And those assumptions are what should come through in your copy. That should be the engagement that you're thinking about as you build that list, right? So it starts
Yep.
from the ground, and then you're kind of going from there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, sales that doesn't scale. Do you have any funny stories or interesting ways that you've kind of built these lists?
Yeah. I have done some kind of wonky lists for, you know, for those that don't know, I'm really big on gifting. And so
Yeah,
I have tried at times to like operationalize gifting and I'll say different with different results. I think that basically one thing that I did when I was an SDR was I had found that like there was a book that I was sending to golf lovers that was like really, really successful. And so then I was just like filtering for like in Sales app, I created a list of like VPs of sales in my book of business that mentioned, I just searched for like the word golf in their like profile. And
yeah.
then yeah, I had a list of like, I don't even know, maybe 20 or 30 people. And I was able to book I was able to book meetings with like the majority of them. And I remember I kind of like A/B tested different types of gifts for golf lovers. And um I don't think I've spoken about this well, I may have spoken about this on the pod, but I'll speak about it again if I haven't. The reason why I'm going to say it's a sale that doesn't scale is um, what I found to have the highest hit rate, and by highest hit rate I mean 100% because I sent it to one person and I got a meeting. To a golf lover was a golf ball with this guy's face on it, and I literally screenshotted his LinkedIn profile pic and put it on a golf ball and sent it to him. And yeah, it was like he was blown away. And again, I may have spoken about this on the pod before, but yeah, he was very I still remember I called him. He hadn't responded to me in like a month. I called him and he picked up the phone and he was like, Caspian, for your level of persistence, I give you an A. For your creativity of the gift, I give you an A. For me taking so long to respond, I give myself an F. And I just remember such a weird way to answer the phone, but I was also like, okay, well, I'm for sure gonna book a meeting with this dude, right? So
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was like, I think it also like it doesn't fully scale because there's certain things where it's like I remember I was then having really big success with like a lacrosse gift that I was sending, but there were only like 3 people in my entire book of business who had anything related to lacrosse that were like a decision maker, right? So it's
Yeah.
just so I've tried to get like pretty cheeky with this, but uh I'm curious from your perspective, what are some fun lists that you've built?
Yeah. One recently was I was doing a a campaign for a client, and they basically essentially what they do is they will send feedback via like SMS to customers that go to like I don't know, you go to Wendy's and then it'll be like, how'd you like your meal, whatever, and it'll try to like arbitrate certain issues and whatever, right? So I had this wild idea that the biggest place, like public place that people just like rip brands a new asshole is
All right.
Twitter, right?
Okay.
So I went on Twitter to try to figure out how I could scrape this information from these brands, right? So I had all these target customers that I wanted to go after. And then I tried to pull this information off of Twitter. It's really difficult to do. I couldn't figure it out, but then I figured out that there is this site called Knitter, and it's
Hmm.
Nitter, and
Okay.
it's basically Twitter and X now, uh, but it somehow strips a bunch of the stuff away, and so it's just Twitter, but in another place. And so it didn't have all the safeguards that will typically be protecting Twitter, right? Like
Yep.
there's a bunch of stuff that allows you or stops you from scraping anything. So basically, what I did is I used this to go to Knitter,
Mhm,
find these comments that people were dropping there,
mhm,
and I had AI analyze them to see if they were a complaint. And then basically I drove that complaint. I collected the complaint
yep,
and their response. And then I did an email campaign that basically said like, hey, I saw this complaint on Twitter. While I think you handled it well, wouldn't you like if you could get this feedback and remedy the situation before you get put on blast, right?
mm,
So it was kind of like this play, and I was really excited about it because I was like, oh, as a company, you could use this to understand like what's going on, or there's a bunch of practical applications for it. The reason it is sales that doesn't scale is I was running this and I was really excited, and this was early in the days. This was one of my first contracts,
mhm.
and the client's like, "Hey, who's running up our Anthropic bill? There's this is going crazy today. There's like $2,000 that's gone on
Damn.
it." And needless to say, I was running like a a pretty, I guess, like one of the higher models at the time,
Yeah,
and it was running, and they like cut off the API because that's what we were piping into Clay. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." And thankfully they were like, "Hey man, like you're trying experiments, like this is a startup, like we fuck up so that we can get better."
yeah.
But that was super embarrassing. So I I haven't done that again, but it was pretty cool. I thought it was an interesting way to do it, but I haven't had the balls to try it again.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's, I think that is part of where it's like, there's some super, super, super interesting plays you can run, um, but sometimes the, like yeah, ROI is, like, an interesting talking point, right? Where it's like, yeah, do some of those plays become, like, prohibitively do they become cost prohibitive?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes
What's your
yes, sometimes no,
CAC, right?
right? Exactly.
And
$2,000 a day, right?
that was not it. I guess it got shut off before I could know. I did run that and we got some responses and stuff. So I will say like my reply rate was pretty high on it, but should have used a lesser model. And again, right, if that applies to your business, cool, have at it. But if it doesn't, like it doesn't apply to mine or a bunch of others, then it's like
Yeah,
I'm not going to run it for Demonstro, right?
yeah.
Um, cool. What is your hot take for this week, Caspian? You didn't tell me what it was beforehand, so I'm kind of excited to see what's going on.
Well, it's actually very apropos, and I have a prompt for this week's hot take, and it is that Starburst is not a gummy. And this is actually very personally important to me because, for those of you that don't know, normally each year I will like challenge myself and give something up. For context, last year it was YouTube because I really enjoy YouTube. Um, this year it is two things: energy drinks. So I can still have coffee, to be clear, but I can't have like Monster or Ghost, which I really love. They're terrible for you, but I really love them. And then the other thing that I eat on a really regular basis that is not healthy is sour candy. I just absolutely love it. And so this year I was like, okay, no sour candy. I think like most people would agree that Starburst is not sour candy. I don't know that everyone will agree with me that Starburst is not gummies, and I'm using that to justify that, we have Starburst in the office and I am having some Starburst, but I'm still adhering to my no sour candy thing or no sour gummy. So that is my hot take, is that Starburst is not a gummy, and I just have to believe that. Otherwise, I'm
What
breaking
would
my
what would you
rule.
classify it as then?
I would just say it's candy. It's not gummies, right? It's like, what are Mentos? They're not gummies. They're like candy. Starburst and Mentos. Maybe that's another hot take. Starburst and Mentos are like same. They're cousins of one another. They might even do
Sure, but
stuff.
like, I mean, I guess, but that's like everything's candy in the candy section, right? Like, it's like you need your species, your subspecies, your
Exactly, what's the
genus.
genus?
Like, what is the
Also,
genus?
so just so you know, only because you brought this up, I actually randomly still know the classification of stuff because of a weird song I made when I was in 7th grade. And yes, I'm gonna sing it right now. And it goes, and I'm gonna highlight the things as I call them out. It goes, "What is a kingdom? It is a phylum. You need to classify in order. I have a family in my genus, and my family is a species." So there we go. Bada bing, bada boom. Uh, you're welcome. People
I
were supposed
think, yeah,
to.
for the next episode, we we should play that as our intro music.
Dude, honestly, put a beat over that, throw some auto-tune, that could be a banger. That could be a banger.
It's the banger. Yeah,
What
I
about
like it.
what about you? Aside from my awful hot takes, what else are people gonna get upset about?
Yeah, so mine, I've talked about this a little bit to my wife, and I was saying that like there's all this talk about like, self-driving cars and everything like that. And like I don't really care about self-driving cars.
Mm.
What I'm waiting for is a self-driving RV. Uh
Whoa.
and I think that like once there's a self-driving RV, I'm going to
Mm.
be so stoked because just imagine like you're like, "Oh, you know what? Like I want to go to Colorado today." And
Yeah,
like, I'm going to work, I'm going to take naps, I'm going to take a shower, right? It's like an overnight train
yeah,
or like, and you could just go to different places and be like, you know what? I'm going to do that. Just going to drive all night. I'll wake up the next day. And I'm not talking about like, I got to be behind the wheel with my hands
yeah.
on it.
No,
Like
no.
I can be
Yeah, you're
playing video
napping.
games. I could do
You're
whatever I want.
yeah,
That is what I will be so excited for. Self-driving cars, I don't care. I can
yeah,
drive, it can drive, it doesn't matter. But
yeah,
when I have that capability, uh, it's gonna be paradise, man. I'm just gonna be traveling all over the country. And I don't have to drive. That's the best
yeah.
part.
That's the dream. That honestly sounds fire. I've thought about that where I'm like, as I drive around in my Jetta, it's okay to be impressed. I'm like, damn, it'd be fire to just be able to like beep boop, right? Like on the weekend, like just get up at like wake up at like 6. You know, like I live in the Bay, it's like wake up at 6, put in like slow or like LA as the destination, just like go to sleep in my car, wake up and it's like, oh, I'm in slow, or I'm in LA, or I'm in Miami, you know?
Yep. Yep.
5
Because
days later, you know, just, yeah,
and
relax.
that's a beautiful thing, is I feel like just having that capability, and then 2, like, I feel like the reason I couldn't have, like, a driver for, like, my RV is, like, 1, I certainly can't afford to have a driver, and 2 is, like, I don't know, I feel like I'd have some sort of, like, weird moral issue. I guess
Yeah,
not moral, but, like,
I know what you
I
mean.
don't know, like, do you have to include him in things, you know? Like, are you like,
You're
"Hey,"
paying
like
for yeah,
yeah, like, what does he do? I feel like it's
yeah,
like Larry David and, like, the limousine driver. You're like, "Well, is he just gonna sit out there?" I
yeah,
feel like I'd be worried too much about the driver to make it
yeah,
any fun for me, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, you'd be, like, overly, like, awkwardly you'd be awkwardly overthinking it.
yeah,
I'm the
exactly, exactly. I'd be like,
like, do you make conversation with them? I feel this way. You know what? I'm gonna go second hot take. Barbers, I don't know what to do. I'm a talkative guy. I'm a talkative guy, and I'm an excellent, guarantee you, top percentile people pleasers.
yeah,
Like I am like in the upper echelon of like master people pleasers. And like to the extent that is a problem, where like I will be at the barber shop and like candidly, again, I'm a talkative dude, and like I have finally gotten over the hump of this with like sometimes with Lyft drivers and Uber drivers, but like I'm a talkative guy. I do want to be nice. And so like I'll make conversation. But then my problem is like sometimes I just want to veg out. And like,
yep,
but with barbers, it is with Lyft drivers and like Uber drivers, I feel less weird where it's kind of like we're in different spots. Like I can be on my phone, stuff like that. At the barbershop, I don't know. I think it's because like there's mirrors and like I'm either like awkwardly silently looking at myself or like, and I'm just like nodding and then they're like, shift my head, shift, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yep,
Or I think I just feel weird. So then I like wind up getting into really deep conversations, which I don't mind. It's fun. But sometimes I'm like, I'm kind of tired. I just want like
yep.
to kind of veg out, but I don't want to awkwardly be like ogling myself while that's a we should get that maybe. I don't want to be like catching my own eye in the mirror, ignoring this person that's like right there that is doing me a service.
Yeah.
So don't mind me, just overthinking.
No, I totally agree with you. I think honestly, like, and that's the problem is like the culture around a haircut or the barber is like so much like it's conversation
Yeah.
and a haircut. And I agree with you. And I will go so far as to say, like, I don't ever want to talk to the barber because I'm just like, I don't enjoy a haircut to start.
Mm,
It's like, it's not something that's fun. So like having to talk through it and think about it and shit like that
yeah.
is just like, it's too much for me. I'll talk to my dentist while
Yep.
they like have my mouth open. They're doing
That's
the sucking thing, and
yeah,
they're like,
that's cool.
you know, oh, how's it going? I don't care. I'll talk to anybody. There's
Yeah.
something about being at the barber that I'm
Yeah.
just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't
Interesting.
have this conversation. Get the haircut. Can't do it. So I will talk to Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, everybody. Haircut
Yeah.
is one instance where I'm like, can we just quietly get this done?
Yeah. No, and I want to be clear. Like, I am always, I think, like, I, like, we're both, I feel like, pretty extroverted people, and I love talking to people. I think sometimes it's more just like I'm tired. It's not like I'm like deliberately trying to ignore someone. Sometimes I'm just a little tired, and I'm just like, I would rather just kind of zone out, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
not like think about the next thing, and like where this conversation's going. So,
totally.
but mad love, I
Totally.
want to be clear, mad love and respect to like people anywhere in the service industry. We do not
Yeah.
mean to, we're not, this is meant like truly just as like stuff that we struggle with, right? Like that is like we overthink things and that's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a barber out there, don't talk to me. No,
Yeah.
and that's exactly it, right? Like I like chatting with people. I like making if it's going to make their day easier, more fun, less boring. Like I have no problem doing it, but there's something about a haircut, man, where I'm just like, this is not the place that I feel loquacious. I don't know if it's because they're like cutting stuff off of me, whatever. Anyway,
Yes.
I beat that to death. Cool. Well, next week is actually, I guess not next week, but next episode 11, we have a special guest joining us. Obviously, last episode
Okay.
we had a leak from Pivot, which hopefully you guys got a lot out of that. Next episode, we are featuring Giano from Nooks, and he's going to give us a little bit of a deep dive on cold calling, what they've seen as some really awesome activities that not just the Nooks folks are doing, but people who are using Nooks. So I'm really excited about that episode. I think there's going to be a lot of expertise that he can bring to us.
I would agree. I'm pumped. It's going to be amazing. Thank you all for listening. You all make this podcast possible. And so we're just so grateful to each and every one of you. And let us know what you want us to talk about next. We're always down to yap. So we welcome your thoughts and feedback.
Yeah, and tell us something you disagreed with. Feel free to just shoot us a LinkedIn DM.
An angry voice note.
Yeah, or a voice note. Yes, from another episode. There you go.
Well
Send us
done.
something. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like, and as always, follow, subscribe, like if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple.
Thanks. Bye.